The best way to learn a language? Immersion, living where the language is spoken and using it every day. But if that's not in the cards for you this year, you can still learn a language the second best way, and that's with Babbel. Be a better you in 2024 with Babbel, the science-backed language learning app that actually works. Don't pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors or waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are handcrafted by over 200 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Babbel's designed by real people for real conversations. Babbel's tips and tools are approachable, accessible, rooted in real-life situations, and delivered with conversation-based teaching so you're ready to practice what you've learned in the real world. For instance, I've been using Babbel's convenient courses to help me learn basic conversational skills in German while I'm getting ready for a little trip I'm planning. It's not a language I'd ever studied before, but I find the lessons really easy and kind of like hand-holding me through learning a completely new language to me. And it's reassuring to know that with the help of Babbel, I'll be able to greet people, order food, and ask for directions without having to consult language apps while I'm in Deutschland. I'm still learning. Studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and others continue to prove Babbel is better. One study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester at college. Babbel has over 16 million subscriptions sold. Plus, all of Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by their 20-day money-back guarantee. Here's a special limited-time deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/vulgar. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/vulgar, spelled BABBEL.com/vulgar. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Do you know what lies within nothing?
No.
Do you know where it ends? Do you want to know?
Yes. Counterbalance, a high fantasy audio drama. Season 2, coming 15th of October 2023. Learn more on trilunas.com.
Hello and welcome to Vulgar History, a feminist women's history comedy podcast. My name is Anne Foster, and this is season 7. This season we're looking at, technically the overarching theme of this season is how do you solve a problem like Marie Antoinette? We're going to be, everybody who we talk to, we connect back to Marie Antoinette herself. And because it was a really interesting period of time where so many people were interacting with so many people from other countries, there were all these interactions happening, revolution was breaking out constantly everywhere. So this part 1, season 7, part 1, it's mostly focused on what was going on in America and people who had dealings with America. And you might be like, but Anne, part 1 last week, Peg Plunkett, all took place in like rural Ireland. But yeah, and we're going to see what that has to do with America in this week's episode. So last week, myself and extra special guest co-host Karen Moynihan from Double Love, the Sweet Valley High podcast, we were going through Peg's kind of origin story, and we left you with a cliffhanger that's not dissimilar to where we left after Sally Hemings part 1, if you listen to that episode. Like, again, we've got a girl, she's 16, she's pregnant, she's had quite a harrowing period of time, but as we reassured you last time, Peg, she has this ability to just to thrive, to keep going, her resilience, I have to say her tits outishness. It's spectacular. In this week's episode, we see her starting to get a bit more schemy. I guess she's already considered scandalous, at least by her like horrible family. But we see her kind of take a bit more control of her own life this week. And I don't want to, listen to part 1 to hear all about her like tragic backstory. But part 2, this is where Peg is just like, she's tits out. She's doing her thing. Karen is here to explain all the Irish connections of everything. I'm so excited for you to hear this. So please enjoy part 2 of Peg Plunkett. Anyway, so then she's sent out of the city to go have the baby, and she's headed for Drogheda?
Drogheda.
Drogheda?
Drogheda, yeah.
Drogheda.
Yeah. No, we like to trick people with mad spellings.
Drogheda.
Yeah.
And what's that like? Drogheda.
Drogheda's cool. Yeah, it's just north of Dublin. It's
So
a
close
cool
by.
town,
Okay,
actually.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not that far. Yeah.
So, but unfortunately, she went in this carriage, and one of her relatives was in the same carriage because it was sort of like a bus carriage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it was her cousin was on the coach, but like I have to say that is very Irish. That you're like somewhere, and you're like, God, I hope I don't meet anyone. Oh God, there's 4 of my cousins. Like that. That feels very relatable, I have to say.
Yeah. So then her cousin was like, "Oh, where are you going?" And Peggy's like, "Oh, I'm doing business for my brother-in-law." And then the cousin was like, "Well, come stay with me." And she's like, "Great."
Oh no. Yeah, of course she's trying to hide a massive baby bump at this point too, and just don't be suspicious. So
Yeah.
she's really having to think on her feet here.
Well, and then describe what she does.
Okay, yeah. So they do get as far as Drogheda. Peg hops off the coach and is like, I have to do some business stuff in this inn. I'll be with you in half an hour. So the cousin goes off and she's like, okay, cool, I'll see you then. But Peg runs into the inn. She hires a man to take her to Dunleer, which is a town further out. I think it's like 7 or so miles further north than Drogheda. And just bails out and tells the guy in the inn, like, look, if anyone comes in asking about me, you didn't see me. You don't know where I went. I walked out the door and that's all you know. So she's trying to cover her tracks at this point and just bails off to this other random town further up the coast, just to get away from this cousin. So yeah, that's the plan.
And she does. And she finds some people to live with her, like a farmer and his wife. And she has her baby, who is a daughter who is never mentioned again in this whole story, but presumably was alive.
I guess to a point. Yeah, I did I was kind of waiting to hear about this baby again or this little girl, and she just never pops up again. So it's, probably not great.
So she has the little girl, and then she goes back to Dublin with the daughter, and she just like lives with Mr. Dardis.
Yeah, they live together with their baby. So it's like ostensibly as this couple with a baby, but he still won't marry her. But she's also feeling really stressed and ashamed about the whole thing because like she's lost contact with her family. She ghosted her cousin, and she just feels really guilty about everything and wants to try and make it up with her sisters as well.
Right. So then she goes to try to talk to her sisters to explain what happened, but the cousin had written to the sisters being like, here's what Peg did. So they slammed the door in her face. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, no one will talk to her. It's really awful. They just don't want to have anything to do with her because I guess the last they knew she was living in this house of ill repute, and then she ghosted this cousin, which was really rude. And I guess, what's worse than being rude? So they just cut her off, will not speak to her.
Yeah. So she's like, I don't know, 16 or something. Like
she's so young. Yeah.
Yeah. So she decides to leave Dardis.
Yeah.
And the biography I read was like, why did she do that? He would have taken care of her. And I'm like, because she deserved a better life.
Yeah, this guy sucked. Like, he was never going to marry her.
He sucked. And as far as I know, she left the baby with him because we never hear about that baby again.
Yeah. This is the thing. That is the last you hear of that baby. Yeah.
And this is where, if this was a Sweet Valley Saga, the next chapter would be that baby's story.
Aha.
And her exciting adventures going to America.
Yeah, that's exactly how that would play out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then she always surprises me at every turn. She writes to her father, useless Matthew, and he says, well, you can come back home. Like, that's how desperate she is. She's like, I guess I'll go back to fucking Christopher.
Yeah, she does. But just, he won't even let her into the house when she gets there. Like, he literally leaves her sitting outside the house in the cold and rain. Just doesn't give a shit. Yeah.
Yeah. He gave her a guinea and booked a carriage to take her to Kinnegad. What's that?
It's outside Dublin. So it'd be like on the way back. Definitely. Yeah.
Okay. And by now, like she came from a wealthy family and whatever, but by now she was selling off her clothing for money, which clothing was very valuable at this time. So it's not just like, well, this t-shirt. It's like, no, like clothing was rare and expensive.
It's nice gowns that are going to last for ages. So yeah, this is nice stuff, I would say, that she would have had.
But still, like that's the state she's in to try and this is how she's getting by. Okay. And so then she's approached on the street by some men who invite her to a tea house.
Yes. So I think at this point, she comes up with a plan that she's actually going to go back to Killa, but to live with some of the tenant families that she always got along really well with from the farm. But when she tries to like book a stage or some kind of coach to get back there, everything is booked up. So it's not going to happen. And on the way to doing that, she's approached by these 2 men who are like, hey, come into this tea room with us. And she's like, no, thank you. Runs away, finds out that everything's booked up. So she's just in this state of despair, kind of trudging back to whatever lodgings she's in at the minute. Sees the two guys again and she's like, actually. So they're like, yeah, come have tea with us. And she's like, all right, fuck it, let's go.
And so one of them was like, and so I was like, oh, where's this going? But what happened is one of them was like, if you would permit, I will be your protector and I'll be like your sugar daddy, as they would say. And she's like, okay, then.
Let's do it. Yeah, this dude, Thomas Caulfield, I think he's a wine merchant. He fancies her like crazy because he asks her all these questions and she just answers everything honestly, because at this point she says, I had already suffered by falsehoods. So she's like, I may as well just be honest with these guys. So he's like, oh, okay. Well, if all that's true, then I'll mind you. I'll be your protector. So it's like, okay, this could go really well now, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, he was well connected to an earl, had his own money from his wine business. And so she's like, great. So then she has a son with him because, listeners, this is like her mother.
Oh, this is the thing. Look, and to be honest,
every 9 months she has a baby for the rest of her life.
It's just what's going to happen. So just get used to that. Yeah.
Which is interesting because I've read, I don't think I've ever done an episode about like a literal sex worker, which she is not yet. But other people who've lived like exotic, exciting lives, like they're not having a baby every 9 months.
They're not knocked up constantly. Yeah, I know. And there is birth control at this time. I guess she just either doesn't know about it or doesn't want to. I don't know what the deal is there exactly. Yeah.
Like, at least at the beginning, perhaps you could think the same way she didn't have skills to be a domestic servant. Maybe she wouldn't have heard about birth control because she was raised in this sort of like rich family. But eventually, the people that woman at the boarding house could have told her some stuff.
Yeah, it gets to a point where a lot of people in her life would have known a lot about this and could have clued her in. So you do feel like there was certainly a point where she would have known what to do, but she's just having those babies.
Yeah, that's just what she's doing. So anyway, so this guy was Thomas Caulfield, but he couldn't marry her because he was rich and she was not. But he was like, in fact, he married another woman, but he was like, well, I'll keep giving you an allowance as long as you keep living as per my Christian Grey from 50 Shades of Grey rule.
Yeah, exactly. So
which are
living with propriety.
Yeah.
Don't have friends.
Don't have friends. Don't talk to any men ever. Stay in the house all the time. As she does for her whole life, and to her credit, ignored him. And just,
yeah. She's like, no, man, my friends are super fun. I'm not doing that.
Yeah,
so
she has
the point.
Yeah, like a found family. Like she just has these cool friends. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So she's not giving them up. So he does end up cutting off her allowance, but because she's had this kid, he does still provide for the son. So she's okay for a while, but then the son dies of an illness at quite a young age. So now Peg is broke again.
And she's by now like in her early 20s. Because remember, she spent a year with him or something. Anyway, so she's now a young adult. And she finds a new patron who is Mr. Leeson.
Yes.
Which is funny to me because I kept thinking Liam Neeson. Nope, Mr. Leeson, which is like Liam Neeson if you made that one name.
Yeah.
It's Leeson.
It would be Leeson.
Because he's Irish, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Mr. Leeson. Liam Neeson, who is...
You can just picture him as Liam Neeson, actually.
Might as well. Although he is a wealthy English gentleman. And this is like the book that you read, like it's Mrs. Leeson, right? Like she uses this surname.
From this point, I think, she kind of professionally goes by Margaret Leeson.
Not that she married him, but...
No.
So he also was like, here's my list of rules for you. Like, give up your friends, stay inside all the time. It's like... They're all mad for her. Like, she must have been so charismatic and beautiful.
She really must have been, yeah.
Yeah, the way that everyone fell for her. But then immediately, I just watched the movie Showgirls, which I don't know if you've watched that recently.
Not recently. I have seen it before and had a great time watching it, but it's been a while.
It's so good. But what happens in that movie that really struck me upon this viewing was Nomi Malone, Irish name. She comes to Las Vegas and every single person who meets her is just like, let me help you or fuck you.
Yeah.
Like, everybody, like she's got this chaotic energy and everyone's just like, yes, like everyone she meets, she becomes the center of the world. And Peg Plunkett is that to everyone she meets.
That's so true. Yes. She like everyone's crazy about her. Everyone fancies her. Everyone wants to fuck Peg. Like she's just the coolest, the funniest. And she is funny. That's the thing. Like her writing is really funny and witty, and very, very readable. So I do get it. Like she's obviously a great time to hang out with. Yeah.
And yeah, two men in a row are like, okay, great. I love you and I want to be around you all the time. But also I want to keep you in a room like a little doll.
Yeah, don't talk to anyone. You're mine alone. And that's it, which is no kind of life.
Okay. She was like, yeah, sure. Okay. But did not change her behavior at all.
No, she also had these two pals, Jackson and Lawless, at the time, who were great fun to hang around with.
Do you mean
like,
Buck Lawless?
Oh, God. Yeah.
Who, not to spoil what he's going to end up doing, but the name Buck Lawless is iconic.
It's kind of great, isn't it? And Buck is kind of it's more of a nickname, I think, at the time, where like a lot of young men about town would have been known as like Buck English, Buck Lawless, Buck. It was just kind of a like young Lawless, that kind of thing.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask you that because there's someone else later in the book who's also called Buck. And I thought, was that like the Ewan of the time? Like, was everyone just called Buck?
Nobody was ever actually called Buck. So it was kind of a nickname because, yeah, Buck Whaley was another Buck. And it is just like a term for kind of young men about town with a bit of money to them, were the Bucks in town. Yeah.
So the thing with the name Buck Lawless, and I was telling friend of the podcast, Alison Epstein, who is as into Australian bushrangers as I am. Because the Australian bushrangers, a lot of them were Irish criminals sent to Australia.
Okay, yeah, of course.
And they all had cool names like Captain Moonlight and things like that.
Nice.
And I was like, Alison, I'm reading a story and someone in it is called Buck Lawless and he's not an Australian bushranger. And Alison was like, wait a minute. So it's kind of like the culture of Ireland. Like, I love the bushranger whole vibe, but it's like, oh, I think that's just Irish people went there and the culture unchanged.
Just wholly imported. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's what she was like. And I was like, you are right. Because I was like, his name is Buck Lawless. That's not his pseudonym. His name is Buck Lawless. Now, he is a wrong-un.
Yes, very much so. At this point, he's just like her fun friend.
Yes.
Who's kind of jumping in through the window while Leeson thinks she's being very well behaved.
No, this is great. This is great. Yeah. Because Leeson is like, don't see anyone. And she's like, great. And then she has these two lovers who come visit her all the time.
And the two guys are friends as well. Like, it's so funny. I think she met one of them first and he was like, you've got to meet my friend. You're going to love him. And it's like these two guys, Jackson and Lawless, and you're like a double act at this point where they're both banging Peg and they're both friends. So it's a fun throuple.
And that's the thing, like the polyamory of this. Like Peg is just like, I'm up for anything. So Leeson is like, let's get Peg out of Dublin. To his country home in Kildare. Is that another like nice place that's near Dublin?
County Kildare is like right outside Dublin. It's kind of a big commuter belt now at the minute where a lot of people that work in Dublin would live in Kildare because it's not that far to get into the city. Yeah. Kildare is nice as well. Yeah, it's where St. Bridget's from.
Oh, nice. Oh, St. Bridget from the movie Irish Wish.
The one and only.
Everyone needs to subscribe to Karen's Substack because you wrote such a great review of that film.
Thank you.
Okay, so they went to Kildare, which is basically not even like leaving Dublin at all, from what you just said. Like, if you're like, I don't want you to see your lovers, it's like they can get to her very easily.
Yeah, it wouldn't be that difficult.
Anyway, so he was called back to Dublin, and then Jackson and Lawless came up to Kildare, I think, with an assist from Leeson's manservant, who just like kept like, that's the other thing. Like Peg was able to get away with this because she got all the servants on her side to help her.
Yeah. This is the thing. She's got that charisma. She knows what, like, the domestics in a house. She's like, you win them over by being nice to them and giving them stuff. Like, that's all you need to do. And then they're all like, we fucking love Peg. We will help you with all your shenanigans.
Yeah, she does. Like, she's got very good instincts. Like, at the 5 hours from now, when we get to scoring her, her scheminess, I think, is quite high.
Yeah.
Here's a quote from Peg. Chastity, I willingly acknowledge, is one of the characteristic virtues of the female sex. But may I be allowed to ask, is it the only one?
Oh, love it. She's so great.
You know what? As we go through this episode, if we come up with a merch idea, like I will hire you.
You better if it's about Peg.
Yeah, no. So just keep your eyes out for like what would be a good T-shirt here, and we'll. Listeners, when you hear this, perhaps it'll be in the store.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay, so basically it's just like she's in Dublin, he's in Kildare, or vice versa. Oh no,
Mhm.
no. So this is where she stays in Dublin in lodgings, but the lodgings are owned by one of her friends, who she also bribed to keep her activities hidden from Leeson.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, that's it. Because yeah, there's a bit of back and forth between Kildare and Dublin. So he kind of wants her secluded in Kildare. She's like, yeah, okay, cool. You better be a really nice house, and it is. So she's fine. And then he has to go back to Dublin, doesn't want to leave her there. So he then brings her back to Dublin, puts her in like Ranelagh, which is like a really nice suburb. And so she's not quite in the city. So she's a little bit removed from like all the temptation as far as he can see it anyway.
But guess what? Jackson and Lawless, they're movable.
They are willing to travel. So yeah, she is living it up in this house. So he's out in Kildare now, I think, working on the big house, or there's some kind of work or renovations going on the big mansion out there. So she's in Ranelagh getting regular visits from Lawless and Jackson. She's so brazen that she actually just heads over to Lawless's house for like a few nights in a row, because she knows he's in Kildare and it's fine. And the servants are kind of keeping watch for her to make sure he's not going to turn up randomly. So she's just having the best
I have
time.
some more quotes from Peg that just happen to come up in the biography at this point, but I think they speak to her point of view. So one of them is, polygamy was not wrong in its own nature, but merely as it was a great difference between what was evil in itself and what was evil by human prohibition. So she's just saying, like, we're all just animals. Like people, let's just get to fucking. Like, these are just human laws.
Everyone
Yeah.
chill. Just chill out and take your pants off. Come on, let's do this thing.
Okay, now Karen, I want to say, as somebody who was recently married, and congratulations, but here's what Peg says about marriage. I looked upon marriage merely as a human institution, calculated chiefly to fix the legitimization of children, and oblige parents to bring them up and provide for them, to ascertain the descent of property, and also to bind two persons together, even after they might be disgusted with and heartily tired of one another.
Yeah, it's I did read that like literally a few days after having got married, and I was like, damn, Peg. Ouch.
But I think Peg is like, for me, this is how I feel, but I think she's like, to each their own. Like, she's not judgmental.
This is the thing. She really isn't judgmental at all. Like, she's a very chill person. Yeah. And there is a great bit about this house, I think, as well, where, what's his face? Leeson, so he's out in Kildare. He says he's going to be out there for like another month. So she's like, okay, cool. I have loads more time to fuck around, basically. But one of the times that she's out at Lawless's house, he actually does turn up unexpectedly, knocks on the door of the house at like 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. So the people who are in charge and running this house know that it's him because Peg has described him to them, but they've never actually met him face to face before. So they don't let him in because they know she's not there and she's going to get in shit for this. So they're like, what are you doing here? Don't disturb her family at such an early hour. So they send him off. He's furious, goes to his friend who had set her up in this house, who was also Peg's friend, and is like, I can't believe you tricked me. Where is she? You're all lying to me. And the friend is like, no, she's there. They just didn't let you in because they never met you before. So really, they're just following your instructions. So like, they're doing you a favor here. He's like, look, I'll get dressed. I'll go over with you. I'll show you she's there. So he takes a bit of time to get dressed, sends a note to Peg in the meantime to say, get back to the house now. We're going to be calling. So by the time they do get back to the house, knock on the door and they're let in, Peg is like sitting down, wearing like her little morning cap, reading a book, just like butter wouldn't melt. Like, oh, hi guys. I've been here the whole time.
A legend. She's a legend.
She's amazing. She's so
But
fast.
then I also appreciated the detail of how she was caught out, because so Leeson hired someone to follow her. And what this guy saw was Jackson and Lawless coming into her house accompanied by a band of musicians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he can hear the concert and the entertainment and all of this happening from outside the house. And it's like he sees them all go in, does not see any of them depart. So yeah, bad news for Peg.
Just the audacity of like, she knows that she's not supposed to be doing this. She knows that he's probably following her. And she's just like, could you just have an entire band come in?
Just, it's not suspicious. It's fine.
Yeah. So he, at this point, cuts ties with Peg. So she turns to Buck Lawless. She chooses him over, what was the other, Jackson? You're giving away what Buck Lawless is going to be like, Karen.
Sorry. I'm sure he's great.
Buck Lawless, what a great person. You can tell by his name.
Come on. I was going to say, with that name.
So she turned to Buck Lawless, and she spent the next few years in what her biographer called the happiest and most stable period of her life. I would disagree.
Same. Yeah, I do not agree with that. Yeah, I think at this point he's actually in a position to take some kind of care of her because his older brother has recently died. So he's got a bit of an inheritance going on, a bit of property. So he's in a better position now than he ever would have been before. So he's like, all right, cool. You come with me. So she's like, yes, nice one. Because he was always her favorite anyway.
Yeah. So for the next 5 years, she had 5 children with him because that is her way.
That is certainly her way. Damn it, Peg.
And I will say that her being pregnant did not get in the way of her fucking throughout her life. So
no,
it's not like a 9-month break. No, it's no.
Oh no. She does not take breaks. She will just keep
She's
going.
Just like, this is great. I can't get pregnant again because I'm already pregnant.
Yeah, exactly. It's already happened. So let's go.
So, I mean, as we have directly stated several times, Buck Lawless sucks.
Yes, he does.
Not to a Christopher extent, but like,
no,
who could?
He's not a good guy, though.
It's a real toxic on-off situation. Her biographer says
Very
the
toxic.
relationship became tempestuous.
Yeah, tempestuous covers a lot, doesn't it? It's like, do they have the occasional row? Does he beat the shit out of her? What kind of scale are we talking about here exactly?
And it's a bit more the latter.
As a podcast network, our first priority has always been audio and the stories we're able to share with you. But at Realm, we also sell some pretty cool merch, and organizing that was made both possible and easy with Shopify. When you think about successful businesses like Aloe or Allbirds or Skims, an often overlooked secret is the business behind the business that makes selling and, for shoppers, buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. That's because nobody does selling better than Shopify. It's the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret secret that's definitely worth talking about is that Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%. That's more happy customers and way more sales going. If you're hoping to grow your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more, sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout we use with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/realm, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/realm to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/realm.
With your long forgotten name, we call upon you.
We call upon you.
In the words of the unspeakable language, we call upon you.
We call upon you.
By the spilt blood of the wicked who walk upon this world, sprouting the words of false idols, we call upon you.
We call upon you.
On the land of the dead harvest, that which brings the earth itself into your service, Yamal, we call upon you.
We call upon you. We call upon you. We call upon you.
Yamal calls upon you.
The Sprouting, a Call of Cthulhu actual play podcast by Blighthouse Studio. Find us on your podcatcher of choice.
People often look at me with confusion when I ask them what their only one in the room story is. They think it has to be like mine, where I went to a 600-person event and discovered that I was the only Black person there. I know. Horrifying, right? Hi, I'm Laura Cathcart-Robbins, and I am the host and creator of the podcast Only One in the Room. Every week, my co-host Scott Slaughter and I invite you to join us for an hour and lose yourself in someone's only one story. This podcast is for anyone who's ever felt alone in a room full of people, which is to say that this podcast is for everyone.
Yeah, it's all of
And
it.
like every man who's ever been with her, he was jealous all the time. He was jealous when she was with other men, but then she was jealous of him because he would go drinking and carousing.
Yeah. Now, she says in her memoirs that she was completely faithful to him, but Julie may have other sources that suggest otherwise there. But like, as far as Peg is concerned, the way she writes it, she's like, he was so jealous of me and I never had any interest in anybody else while I was with him. She was like, and that is so unlike me, but this is all I wanted while I was with him.
So, and I think that's correct. Like from what I know as well, was he, so
Okay.
the way, I don't know, everyone is always jealous about her, but in this case, the guys had no reason to be jealous. I think it's just like, they love Peg and they want to just keep her away from everybody.
Yeah.
And now for a quick advertising break. And we're back. There was a guy, a former suitor called Captain Benjamin Matthews, ran out her life, and I was like, go with him, Peg.
Oh, I know. Lovely captain. Yeah, he's like, please come away with me. Like, I'll mind you. It'll be great. I'll look after you so well. And she's just so smitten with Lawless. She just will not even consider it. It's not happening.
Yeah, she was just addicted to this toxic relationship with Lawless.
Good dick is a prison. This is the thing.
Is that the merch? No, so far. We might come up with a better phrase, but that's a good one.
Yeah, I don't think I can actually claim that one. I'm pretty sure I heard it somewhere else, but it just applies very much so to Peg in this situation.
Very much so. But just connecting this with like the Revolutionary era, Captain Benjamin Matthews had been sent to America to fight the French in the 7 Years' War. So that's where we are. We're not even at the American Revolution era yet.
We'll get there.
But there's just kind of constantly wars happening in America, and those soldiers all pass through Dublin.
Yeah, they're all there anyway. So, like, what's a few extra soldiers? So, yeah, Dublin is constantly just full of soldiers.
Which is like
basically.
Peg heaven. Peg's
She's
paradise.
so
So,
happy.
just hunky soldiers everywhere.
As far as the eye can see.
So, this is like, again, trigger warning. So she abuse, child loss. So she and Lawless have a fight. He tied her to the bed and beat her up, and she lost the child she was carrying. Also, he was running out of money, and they had to pawn their clothing and furniture. And then, one after another, their 5 children all died of various diseases.
Yeah, it's grim.
And she's, I don't know, 22 or something.
Surely, yeah. Like, she's still quite young.
So this is that paragraph carries a lot of weight in terms of the Trump, but she stayed with him, he beat her to the point that she miscarried this child, this wanted child. And she's like, but you're still my guy. So.
Oh my God.
Peg.
Seriously, please get out of there.
Yeah. Oh, Buck Lawless. Oh, boo. So, they tried to, I found this baffling, but also sweet. So they tried to repair the relationship by going on a weekend getaway.
Oh, they head to the races, isn't it? In Kildare. Yeah.
They go to watch the horse races.
Yeah, it's not going to do it.
No, but let's just go on a little getaway. And this is where we first meet one of Peg's, and this is another thing that reminds me of Sweet Valley High, because she has lots of close female friends, but they're also rivals.
They're frenemies, all of them, yeah.
They're frenemies. And so this is a courtesan named Catherine Kitty Netterville.
Oh, Kitty. She has a great nickname. She's known as Kitty Cuttadash, which is like the coolest name.
That is a great name. And this, yeah.
Yeah.
So Kitty recurs in the story. Anyway, so Kitty had a wealthy guy who is her protector. So they're kind of like a double date to the horse races.
Yeah.
But eventually Buck Lawless, being the worst, he just wanders off. And then she finds him in a brothel with another woman who was one of Peg's friends.
Yes. Yeah. This is the thing. Everyone knows each other. Dublin, I guess, as big a city as it is, whatever kind of circle she's running in, everyone knows everyone. And everyone ends up fucking everyone. So when she finds him with this friend of hers, it's like, oh, for fuck's sake. Are you serious?
So then she does a thing that she does at least one other time in the story, which is she was mad at the woman, which is, the internalized misogyny. So she wrote to that woman's male protector to fuck up that relationship, to be like, did you know she was fucking Buck Lawless in a brothel in Kildare? Which also feels like Jessica Wakefield would do that.
Very, yes.
Also, just for the record, but just assume throughout the story, Peg is pregnant.
You can pretty much assume that.
So she's pregnant. She just walked in on him, he ruining their couple's weekend. And then Lawless just pieces out to America.
Yeah. So his dad, I think at this point, has had enough of all of this. He's not giving him any more money. He said, look, I will set you up with a job in New York, but you're only getting paid when you turn up in New York City. I'm not giving you any money here in Ireland. So he's kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm going to go. So he just bails off and leaves her a letter.
Yeah, it's just like that episode of Sex and the City with Berger, where he leaves the Post-it being like, I can't, I'm sorry.
Basically that. Yeah. Yeah, it's the Georgian equivalent of a Post-it. I'm gone to America. Bye. Sorry.
Yeah, she woke up, but his side of the bed was empty and he was just gone.
Yeah, this fucker.
Which, I mean, I was grateful just because Otherwise, she never would have ended this relationship.
This is the thing. She actually wouldn't. It was going to take something really drastic from one of them for her to get out of this situation. And the fact that he literally went to a different continent was what it took to break up this thing. Yeah.
Thank God. And then she had another child. This was a girl. Does the book say the names of any of her children?
No, none of them are
No.
named.
Yeah, it's just these
Yeah.
various babies who then die.
I know. It's really
Yeah.
sad.
So, I mean, and that's in the backdrop of all of her decision making in her life. But she's just been going from male protector to male protector. Basically, that's what she's figured out
Pretty much.
she can do.
Yeah, this is her kind of, this is how she's managing to get through everything.
So this so she's now in her early 30s. And she's given birth for the 8th time. I feel like her mother had done more by then. But
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, is this one of the times where she's just sort of like really depressed for a while? Like it was when Buck Lawless left her, she had a real.
Yeah, she's really sad. She's got no like there's all these men are still clamoring around her because she's still Peg, she's still great and gorgeous, and everyone fancies her all the time. But she just has no interest. She's just still in love with Lawless. She's heartbroken. She's like, get away from me. I don't want to know about it. Literally, unless he's dead, she's not going to move on, is basically how she feels at the moment. And because she's been away from society for so long and like kept in this series of houses by these men, they're all like, oh, who's this new hottie in town? And it's like, oh, it's me, Peg. So everyone's clamoring for her basically. But I think eventually she discovers that Lawless has written to his father and to his uncle, but not to her. So she's like, oh, what the fuck is this? So she's completely betrayed and really, really angry with him. So she's like, all right, fine. It's time for me to move on, clearly. So she takes up at this point, I think, with this clergyman called Mr. Lambert. Yeah.
Yeah, the Reverend Thomas Lambert. Would it surprise you to know she got pregnant?
It would not. It would surprise me if she was not pregnant, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that would.
If she decided, you know what, that's enough, baby.
Yeah. And I think he was an okay person. It was an okay rebound.
He seems
Yeah.
fine. He really liked her, yeah. But the thing is, like, it doesn't take her too long to go back to her old ways of being too horny for her own good. So this, while she's with Lambert, she also starts seeing this guy, Mr. Cashel, who has no money, but she's infatuated with him. Because again, she seems to really fall for the guys that have no fucking money. And it's like, damn it, Peg, you need to align these things somehow.
Well, and this is one of the times where she was very pregnant by Lambert. And Mr. Cashel was like, that doesn't bother me in the slightest. And she's like, me neither. So
hooray, let's keep banging. Yeah.
but this was at the point where she did, when she became too pregnant, so probably the day before she gave birth, to fuck around, she was like, Kitty, can you take this guy off my hands for a while?
Yeah, she passes off Lambert to Kitty Netterville. But in her mind, she's like, this is just temporary until I have this baby. And then I think she's possibly still fucking Cashel on the side at this point. And she's like, I only want to fuck one guy instead of two while I'm this super pregnant. So so let's just get you out of the picture for a bit. But then, of course, Kitty's like, yeah, absolutely, nice one. Thanks for this great dude who's going to buy me lots of expensive stuff, which he does. Like, he's running up credit in all the Dublin shops to buy things for Kitty. And of course, as soon as Peg has set this up, she's like, oh, damn it, I shouldn't have done that. Look at all this good shit that Kitty's getting. That could have been my nice stuff. So she's already kind of jealous of this whole situation that she has engineered. Totally regrets all of this. And in the meantime, Kitty has told Lambert that Peg was fucking around with Cashel on the side and ditched him to be with Cashel instead. And all this is only temporary. So now this has put Lambert off her forever. There's no way he's going to go back to her. So Kitty has really kind of fucked her over on this one.
But then Peg tells Kitty's protector that Kitty's with Lambert.
Yep. That's it. Mr. Kilpatrick, I think, is the guy that is actually like the main guy for Kitty. So now that he knows this about Lambert, and this is the thing, when Peg tells him, she's like, make sure Kitty knows this has come from me. It's all very tell Cersei, I want her to know it was me. Like, she is claiming all of this. She's like, you better let her know that this is me. So it's just an all-out war now between Kitty and Peg because they've both lost whatever kind of male protectors they had. So now they're just like at each other's throats.
I love this next part, which is Kitty hires a gang of ruffians. So whenever Peg goes to the theater, the ruffians would be in the upper gallery shouting abuse at Peg.
Yeah. Apparently the audience join in so frequently that Kitty gets to the point where she doesn't even have to pay people anymore. They just do it now when they see Peg because the plan worked so perfectly.
This part is great. Like, everything is great, but this is what I mean. Listeners, like this story is great.
this shenanigans. Like, this is the thing. When you see all the kind of like bare facts laid out one by one and you know, all the children dying and everything, it seems really depressing. But the thing is, she's just so sparky and fun and silly that like there's so much good stuff in there too. I feel like her personality just rises above all the tragedy to just be like, she is fun and she's having fun fights with people.
She does. The fights are all very fun. The ones that the inter courtesan bickering.
Absolutely. It's so bitchy. Like, it's great.
Again, that's where I feel like, Sweet Valley High, a little bit.
Yes.
Okay, so then Peg is just like, fuck all this. I'm just going to run my own brothel now. Like, I'm tired of getting male protectors as my only way of protection. Like, I'm going to become a business woman.
Yes. Good for her. Yes. She takes a house in Drogheda Street, which is pretty much now where O'Connell Street is, which is like one of the big main streets in Dublin City. So it's her and her pal Sally Hayes. And as Peg says, in this house, they cared for nobody and wanted for nothing. So they are living it up in this brothel. They're having a great time.
And her and Sally Hayes, this is like, it's not really a frenemy situation. Like, Sally Hayes is a proper pal.
No.
Like,
she's properly her friend. Yeah, for years.
And I love that the two women just like decided to do this together, and it does, because Peg has this reputation. Everyone knows Peg. Everyone loves Peg. And she's like, well, let's monetize that.
Yeah, this is the thing.
I did like this detail that they, at least initially, they employed the Jewish musician Isaac Isaacson to follow them wherever they went, playing on his dulcimer.
I love it. She's got her own soundtrack and everything. She's iconic. I mean, who else as a topic of your podcast has had their own soundtrack as they've walked around? I mean, come on, that's great.
No one yet. Well, and that also explains the time when she had Jackson and Lawless bring the band to come. She's like, I need music constantly.
This is it. She loves a soundtrack. She just has to be, played in and out of rooms. That's great.
It's fabulous. But then what happens, if you're curious about listeners, Isaac Isaacson became really popular and eventually they couldn't afford him anymore.
Yeah. And it's probably because of her that he became so popular, because everything she does, everyone's crazy about it. Like, she's a trendsetter. I
didn't write down, but there's the whole thing about the hoop skirt. How she popularized wearing these really, really, really wide skirts. Because she's like, these look cool and I'm going to do it. And everyone's like in Mean Girls, everyone's like, oh, she's doing it. Okay, I guess we're all going to wear hoop skirts now.
It's exactly that. She brings them back from London for her and Sally, and they're walking around just turning heads all around the city. And all the like fabric shops are like, oh my God, fucking nice one. These skirts are ginormous. They're going to take so much fabric to make. We are going to make so much money. So like, this trend suits everybody. So she's having a great time. They're having a great time. Everyone's delighted.
The way that she, as the OG influencer, the way that she brought money into the businesses of Dublin was admirable. And that's why later on, they stand up for her.
It very much stands to her side. Yeah.
So by now, 1778, the American Revolution is happening. She hasn't heard from Lawless in 4 years in America. And then, goddammit, he shows up in Cork and he wants to see her.
This fucking guy. Yeah, at first she doesn't want to go. This is the thing, but her friends talk her into it. Sally's kind of like, well, what if he's come back with loads of money and he might give you some of it if you go see him? And it's like, oh, she's got a point, but unfortunately he doesn't. But it does kind of make Peg go, yeah, fuck it, all right, let's go to Cork and go see him.
And she gets pregnant.
Peg! Honestly, drink every time Peg's pregnant.
Or don't. So they just like hang out together in Cork, and then they're like, okay, let's all go back to Dublin. We're like hanging out. And then this is one of the things I was, okay, it's a terrible story. Yes. Comma.
Yes.
The name of this gang makes me laugh every time. Can you reveal the name of the gang, Karen?
Okay. So there's a lot of gangs. I say, there's like gentlemen's clubs, we'll say, which are basically glorified gangs in Dublin at this time. And these ones are known as the Pinking Dandies.
And Peg calls them the Pinking Dindies.
The Pinking Dindies, yes. Yeah. And the thing about pinking, like pinking means stabbing someone. So it's like... Oh. Yeah, so if you pink, like they would go, this is why they got their name. So they carried swords and they would pink people as they passed them in the street, which would mean just like a light stabbing. So like you're drawing a tiny bit of blood, you've pinked someone. So that was the pinking of it all. But like as an out of context name, Pinking Dandies just sounds like the fruitiest little bunch of guys that are not going to hurt anyone.
It sounds like maybe a drag show version of the Peaky Blinders.
Oh my God, yes, it does.
Or like, yeah,
Very
it's kind of like the Peaky Blinders younger gay brothers.
Mm.
So the first time I came across the name, I was just like, what?
Yeah, fair.
What?
the who now?
It is, yeah, the two names I was most excited. And they were both horrible situations, but they're great names. Is Buck
Yes.
Lawless
This is the thing.
and the Pinking Dandies.
Mhm. Yeah, that's it. You see, there's a lot of good names in George and Dublin. There's that kind of mix of having like English names and then Irish surnames, and it lends itself to a lot of really fucking cool names.
Okay, and now we're going to explain what they do, but I want to explain that the leader of the Pinking Dandies is Richard Crosby, Ireland's first man to fly in a balloon.
Oh, fucking yay.
There's a statue of him, I read.
There is in Ranelagh where like he had his first ascent in the balloon, and like you look at his Wikipedia and it's all like, ooh, his youthful curiosity. He's Ireland's first airman, isn't he great? And it's like, oh right, no mention about this little fucking episode in his history though, is there? So it's all just like, God, isn't he great? Richard Crosby, what an inventor, what a fucking innovator. It's like, what a piece of shit.
Yeah. So we need to myth bust that for all the Irish aeronautical fans.
Please.
So the Pinking Dandies, despite their very silly name, which I now know is a scary name,
but it's actually kind of stabby.
that is so funny. Their vibe is
Yes.
the gang from Clockwork Orange. They're just like rich guys who just go around just like beating and stabbing people with impunity because they're so rich and well connected.
Yeah, and that was kind of the vibe of a lot of these kind of Dublin like clubs and gangs. Possibly not to the extent of these guys, but like there were a lot of clubs around at the time that were just getting hammered and terrorizing people, and that was their deal basically.
That's what they did. It's like, I don't know a lot about gangs today. Well, I live in Saskatchewan. There are gangs here. I think there are everywhere. But it seems like the gangs, they steal things and they like sell drugs and they like, that's what they're doing. Yeah. But this gang was just wandering around terrorizing anyone. It's not just like the gang's enemies. They're just like breaking into random houses and just like it's.
Yeah. They're just causing shit for everybody, for whoever. Like they just don't care. They're rich enough that it doesn't matter, and their dads are going to be able to get them out of whatever trouble they end up in eventually.
Yeah, so exactly the vibe of Clockwork Orange. And so what they did, so Peg, recall she is pregnant. Recall she has this daughter that she had a bit ago.
Oh yeah, this is the daughter she had with Lawless, I think.
No, she's pregnant by Lawless. It's the daughter she had with the Reverend.
Sorry, with Lambert, you're right. Yes, I'm getting my L's mixed up. Yeah.
To be fair. She's been pregnant so a lot, and we don't know any of the children's names, so it's easy to conflate them.
Yeah.
So she's just hanging out in her brothel, and they just broke in. And I don't know. I don't want to tell the story. You probably don't want to either. But do you want to just kind of highlights version?
Yeah, like they break into the house. She doesn't want to let them in, which is why they get super violent super quickly. They just smash all the windows and come in that way instead. They break all the furniture, turn the place upside down. They say they're looking for Lawless. He's not there. So they just completely wreck the place. They beat up Peg so badly that she does lose the child that she's carrying. And in the kind of horrible aftermath and trauma of seeing all this, the little girl that she had with Lambert does actually die. And I think she was only 4 at that stage. In just the horrible aftermath of this terrible event. There's loads of witnesses to this crime as well, because it's a huge chaotic scene that's happening in this house on a busy street. So all her neighbors, like the whole neighborhood is out there kind of going, oh my God, what's happening? I think they end up calling in the militia to stop these guys. And it's just this horrific night of just this savage attack on Peg and her house. And it's really, really horrible.
And it's led by Irish hero, Richard Crosby.
So he was the leader of this gang. So yeah, this fucking guy. Yeah.
I know. The fact that he has a statue.
It's like fucking knock that shit down and put Peg up instead, honestly. Like she should have a statue.
I support that. And people of Ireland.
I'm going to go do some quick vandalism. I'll be right back.
Okay, yeah. Okay, and we're back.
I knocked it down.
So the fact that she was pregnant and she lost the child, that makes this, so she filed suit against them. Like she took this to court, which is a thing she will do to a lot of people in a lot of situations, and that's part of why the biographer Julie Peekman was able to verify some times and dates and things because of the court records. But anyway, because the unborn child had died meant this was a murder charge, or this could be a murder charge. As well as just like damage to property and whatever. Eventually, she ended up dropping that charge for legal reasons. I don't know.
Yeah, I think his family are obviously really well connected. His brother was possibly a baronet or something. So they're getting involved. They're trying to convince her to drop the murder charge at least, which she does. And it's like, when you're reading all this, I'm like, well, I want him dead. So why has she done this? But I guess she's trying to pull off this balancing act of keeping the city on side. And if she actually does get like this, like fucking guy hanged, is that going to turn people against her? I guess she's having to try and play the odds to a certain amount here as well. And I don't know, I guess it's some self-preservation is possibly kicking in here too for her.
Well, and I think throughout her life, she's had to sort of balance out just like how can she still thrive as best as possible and keep these connections she needs to maintain, but also show like, you don't fuck with me. Like,
exactly. Yeah. It's a tricky line to maintain.
Yeah. So he ended up being fined. He was confined to jail. Freed pretty quickly, but eventually he paid her for the property damage. The other Pinking Dindies, they all just kind of like left town because they didn't want to be charged, and they were never put on trial. So just him.
Yeah. And the thing is, in later years, she does actually, like when he's doing his big fucking balloon ascent in Ranelagh, she's there and shakes hands with him before he goes up in the air. So like she's in the papers and it's this whole thing. So I guess she did not forgive him, but she's seen in public with him after the fact. So, so that she's kind of like, oh, we're all fine now, but it's all to keep her name circulating too, I suppose, and get her being mentioned and stuff. So she's still trying to, work things to her advantage as well.
Well, it's true. And I think you're absolutely right that part of that would be to keep her name in the papers. So, like, she was very famous and she needed to maintain. So if it's like, oh, an Irish person is doing something interesting, like, I'll just go be there also.
Yeah, exactly. Despite the terrible things that he's done, like, it's worth it for me to get my name in this paper and to be mentioned. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing too, like, her life, like, it's reading it like if it was a novel or a book or a movie, you'd be like, oh, here's what I want her to do. But it's like, no, she needs to continue living in this city. And so
this is the thing. Yeah. And yeah, it's a tricky time to be a woman, full stop. So, I mean, she's having to deal with a lot.
Yeah. So her decisions, it's where I want that, like, final scene of Showgirls moment where she just like kicks the shit out of him.
Yeah, so badly.
But that's not what she's able to do.
It wasn't going to be feasible. Yeah.
So I mentioned it in part 1, and I do just want to reiterate what the references were that both Karen and I used for this episode. And I mean, there's going to be part 3. Like, stay tuned. This is another cliffhanger because this story, so much happens in it. I really feel like it's necessary to sort of take it piece by piece and just kind of be like, she did what to who, and like how many children did she have and with who? Like, anyway, so we're gonna have part 3 next week. But thank goodness Peg herself wrote her memoirs, and that was Karen's. So she read the actual memoirs, the memoirs of Mrs. Margaret Leeson by Peg Plunkett, aka Mrs. Leeson. I read a recent book that's called Peg Plunkett, Memoirs of a Whore by Julie Peekman, which takes the memoir and kind of adds some more context to it by doing her own research as well. So I think it actually worked out perfectly. We didn't plan that, but each of us had read this in a different way. So I had some details she didn't have. She had some details I didn't have. Both of these works are fantastic. And I love, like, there's something about a chaos person who then wrote a book about their own life. Like, this is Lola Montez energy. It's Catalina de Arauzo energy. Like, this is the writing of a memoir is a really special thing. So next week, stay tuned for what happens, the part 3 of this ongoing saga of just, I want to say also, so Nicola Coughlan, another Irish icon, came out with her song just at the end of June, Shoes, More Shoes. And I was like, that's such a Peg Plunkett vibe. Just this, like, just Irish tits out, amazing, like, sensual dance. Like, that's the vibe of this song. I think I'd said before that I was thinking of it when I was preparing, like, reading the episode. I was listening to a lot of Sabrina Carpenter's song Espresso, which for part 1 you might be like, and that was like a tragic story, but part 2 you see what I mean. Like, everyone wants to fuck Peg Plunkett. She's just like dancing around, having the time of her life. And I think it's a real shoes, no shoes vibe is what we've moved into. Like from Espresso is like a young Peg, Shoes More Shoes is like, she's like finding herself a bit more. Anyway, next week, part 3, Karen is here again. Like, we're going to wrap it all up. And if you want to hear more of me and Karen talking about things that are, as much as we tried to stay on topic in this episode, I was able to do that personally because I knew that we were going to record another special episode. So all Patreon members who are at the $5 per month or more level are able to hear. I did a recording of the after show with Karen Moynihan where we talk about Sweet Valley High. We talk about just some more stuff about Irish history, like just every burning question I had for her, which you can tell through these episodes. Like, I'm such a fan of her and her podcast Double Love, and I was so happy to get to talk about this amazing story with her. But anyway, you can get more Anne and Karen, patreon.com/AnneFosterWriter. And if you pledge $5 or more a month, you can hear that special after show we did. Also, if you join the Patreon at $1 or more a month, you get early ad-free access to all the episodes. So if you're just like, I can't wait to hear Peg Part 3, like, you get that a few days early if you join for $1 a month. And if you join the Patreon for free, like, that's an option. I'm posting some more information there, some pictures of some of the places that we talk about in this episode. That's where I'm doing more of my sharing of, I'm doing stuff on Instagram as well. Instagram, we're at Vulgar History Pod. Like, I'm always there, never going to not be there. But I will say that what I like about posting stuff at Patreon so that the paid members can see it and the free members can see it is just like, I know you see it, like, because you get a notification when I post something. On Instagram, it's kind of random who sees what. Anyway, I'm also on Patreon. If you join there at the $5 a month or more level, you get access to other episodes of the after show, as well as episodes of Vulgar Piece Theater, where I talk about costume dramas from history. And also So This Asshole episodes, where I didn't do one about Peg's brother, Christopher, because we talked about him enough, frankly, and I want to just never think about him again in my life. I also want to mention I have a Substack, and also Karen has a Substack. So if you want to keep up with both of us in sort of like a blog adjacent type way. So my Substack is vulgarhistory.substack.com, and hers, I'm just double checking. I think it's Part-Time Gas Bitch. Let me just make sure. She has posted so many good things. A lot of them, she wrote a thing about like her live reaction to the most season. Speaking of Nicola Coughlan, to series 3 of Bridgerton. She did a review of Cruel Intentions. She watched Irish Wish, the Lindsay Lohan Ireland set movie. Anyway, she did a review of J-Lo's movie. So yeah, it's gasbitch.substack.com if you want to keep up with Karen as well. So her podcast is Double Love, the Sweet Valley High podcast, which is near and dear to my heart. And like, as we discussed here, just sort of like somehow, well, not somehow, I have forced my way into that ecosystem. And now we're sort of podcast cousins, I guess. So you should definitely listen to Double Love, the Sweet Valley High podcast. They have a huge archive. They're up to book like 100 and something. They have one episode. They have at least one episode for each Sweet Valley High book. Even if you haven't read the Sweet Valley High books, I think you hear how much fun Karen is. Her co-host Anna is equally as fun, and you should listen to that as well. And we, Vulgar History, we have a brand partner, Common Era Jewelry. Common Era Jewelry is a small business. It is a women-owned business that makes beautiful jewelry themselves. Like, it's not sent off to some factory somewhere for somebody else to do it. Like, this is why the prices are what the prices are, because you're buying quality, you're buying something that's handmade by a small woman-owned business. Their pieces are made entirely in New York City. And so everyone involved has healthcare and good wages. But the main thing, the reason why they were brought to my attention by you, actually, members of the Tits Out Brigade, were like, saw the ads and were like, this makes me think of you. I was like, this makes me think of me too. So the designs that Tori, the designer, does, they're all about difficult women from history, quote unquote, difficult women. So it's people we've talked about on the podcast. So Hatshepsut is there, Boudica, Cleopatra, Agrippina. They're mostly from classical history or like ancient history / classical mythology. So like Medusa is there, Aphrodite is there, Sappho is there. And then also Anne Boleyn is there because why not? And basically, I love this jewelry. I love this company. And also, like, I really feel for Tori because she posts on her Instagram. I think it's just Common Era on Instagram. Sometimes people get really mad when they see that she's calling a collection difficult women. Like, people think that she's insulting them or something, where it's like, no, like, we're celebrating complex women from history. Anyway, their pieces are available in solid gold as well as in more affordable gold vermeil. And Vulgar History listeners always get 15% off all items from Common Era by going to commonera.com/vulgar or using code vulgar at checkout. If you want to get Vulgar History merchandise, including the several designs by Miss Karen Moynihan, It's available at vulgarhistory.com/store. Or if you're outside the US, you can also shop at vulgarhistory.redbubble.com. And as I said last week, and I'll just remind you again this week, like we are working on a Peg Plunkett design. I'm going to announce what it is next week. So if you want to like get your carts ready with other Vulgar History merch, and then I'm going to announce what the Peg Plunkett design is next week, and then we can all just run around like our favorite horny chaos slutty Irish lady and just like have musicians playing wherever we go, like just having the best of times. You can get in touch with me if you have need of getting in touch with me. If you go to vulgarhistory.com, there's a contact form there. I also check my DMs on Instagram where I am at Vulgar History Pod. Next week, Peg Plunkett, part 3. Can't wait to talk about this even more with all of you. And until next time, keep your pants on and your tits out. Vulgar History is researched, written, and hosted by Anne Foster. That's me. The editor is Christina Lumagi. Theme music is by the Severn Duo. The Vulgar History show image is by Deborah Wong. Transcripts are written by Aveline Malik. Find transcripts of recent episodes at vulgarhistory.com.
Talmor, Sheshin Morachi. Talmor is my home. My family have worked the land for generations. My gran says the island does not belong to us, but we belong to the island. And we must be ready, for a great evil is coming, and death follows with it.
Listen and subscribe to the latest season of Undertow, The Harrowing, a Storyglass production presented by Realm, available wherever you get your podcasts.
Contained herein are the heresies of Redolf Buntwine, erstwhile monk turned traveling medical investigator. Join me as I study the secrets of the divine plagues and uncover the blasphemous truth that ours is not a loving God, and we are not its favored children. The heresies of Redolf Buntwine, wherever podcasts are available.